I agree. People should be worried. And I would say, too, the electorate.
I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand whether there is even an ounce of conservatism in this. I would think that if you really push deep, the one thing you really have to believe in is the Constitution and defense of it. These people don't. Well, they say they do, but they
say they do. That's the thing. It's what, we have to burn the village in order to save it, right? I mean, I think that among some populists, their worldview is so apocalyptic and conspiratorial that they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
And, I reject that, but if we're trying to get into their psychologies, I think that's where they're coming from. And I would say just too that these concerns about the democracy are not, they're not really visible in the electorate at large, right? I mean, the president's, since we're talking contemporary politics now, that President Biden's approval rating continues to sink. I mean, he's now at Bush levels, at the second term Bush levels, which I had thought would be unique. And
because he's a terrible president.
And
almost every decision he's made has been the wrong one.
So his only hope then is that the electorate sees the return of Trump as a distinct possibility in 2024, and says that that is just something that can't be allowed to happen.
But if the Democrats go the way they're going, which is that Biden is essentially a sock puppet for the woke left, they could nominate someone who would make Trump definitely re-electable. And that's the dynamic that Trump has obviously contributed to. Because at some level, a liberal democracy requires, for it to function at all, a sense that we are all part of the same project in the end, even though we fight each other to death. You lose sometime, and, I'm going to win next time. That is the crucial element. Trump has no conception of that. It is impossible for him to lose anything ever. And his psyche has penetrated the psyche of large numbers of Americans. I think it is more likely than not that he will be the next president. And I do think that American conservatives bear a great deal of responsibility for that, because I have no idea the damage that would happen after that. I mean, this is kind of terminal damage to the Republic, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he
conservatism will end with the destruction of the American Constitution and way of life. And that strikes me as one of the greatest historical ironies imaginable.
They would make for some epilogue to the second edition of my book.
I hope you don't have to.
I mean, I'm not sure we're quite there yet. I mean, and of course, it won't just be. Look, Trump won in 2016 because he won independent voters, right? He lost in 2020 because he lost independent voters by a huge margin. What's the one group of the electorate that Trump declined relative to his 2016 baseline? It was white men. You'd think the most conservative element of our electorate turned against him in 2020, cost him a second term.
Yeah.
Things would have to get really bad for him to be able to turn those things around. And
he won't have to. The Democrats will do it for him.
Well, then it's not just conservatives who'd be responsible, would it?
No.
Right? I mean,
no.
We're all part of this. I mean,
presumably they would bear the bulk of the responsibility if it's their party's nominee. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I think one thing that comes out of the book, Andrew, is that it's not necessarily the Republican Party is just a shell.
Right.
These parties are just institutions. They're just shells. They are reflections of the people in them. And right now, the Republican Party is a populist party. It is a religious, nationalist, populist party, right? So there are still elements of Reaganism in it. There are still elements of constitutional conservatism in it, but it is something different. So it's going to be those voters and those elites who bring Trump a second non-consecutive term, if that actually does happen. And we'll have people who identified with the conservative movement played some part in it, for sure. But I think there's plenty of blame to go around.